Hello. Today I'm going to look at how some permanent planting and long-term vegetable planting can help save time and money in your garden. This garden is in Monmouthshire in southeast Wales, and we're about to move home. And so this year I haven't planted as many annual vegetables as I might do. I have put in cabbages and broad beans, and I sowed onions and garlics last autumn. But when I looked around the garden a few days ago, I realised just how plentiful the vegetables are here, despite having not planted lots of annuals. So I thought it might be really useful to have a look at some of that more permanent planting and longer term planting to see how, even if we didn't plant any more annuals this year, we'd still be able to eat really well. Let's start with some of the brassicas. This is a Taunton Deane kale. This is perennial kale, really hardy, very easy to grow, and the nice thing is it's also really easy to propagate. So you can even propagate it during cooler months, and all you need to do to propagate this is take a piece. I recommend that you cut it and not pull it like I just have. Remove the lower leaves. Cut it just below a leaf joint, and then push this into some compost. So that can either be some compost in a pot, or you can push it straight into the ground. Give it a water, and as long as it's not in blistering heat like we've had here for the last few days, this will root quite quickly and grow on. And once it's a little larger, you can then pinch out the growing tip, and that will make it much bushier. So they will grow to something like 2.5 to 3 metres across and the same high. They can get really enormous, or you can keep them cut back and keep them in a smaller area. This one is now about 2 metres in each direction, and it is in a raised bed, but I would still say that this is about 120 centimetres high. Still got a bit of growing to do. However, because we are moving, I've taken plenty of cuttings over the last few months to take with me, and I've also got a variegated version of this kale which we'll be planting in our new garden. This is a walking stick cabbage and will grow incredibly high, and this one has fallen over and is growing at a rather jaunty angle. Now I find the taste of this just a little bit strong, but if you're really keen on cabbagey taste, this is another good one to grow, and because it will grow tall, you can grow other crops underneath it. Just make sure that you support it when it's younger to get it to actually grow straight. It comes from the Scilly Isles, where it will grow 3 to 4 metres tall, and this produces this very long stem with the leaves on the top of it. I find it relatively trouble-free. It does get attacked by our cabbage white butterflies, but that's okay. I'm happy to share it with them. And this beautiful cabbage is a Asturian tree cabbage. The leaves become enormous. This is a short-lived perennial. It lives 2 to 3 years in our garden, and when the flower shoots start forming, I just snap them off to prolong it. We find that probably 2 or 3 leaves are enough as a side dish in one of our meals. Now this is one of the baby leaves. They do get really big. And again, this one is not troubled so much by cabbage white butterfly and moth. I can see there are a few on here already, but we grow quite a lot of this, and I'll find that maybe 1 in 6 plants gets attacked, and others almost don't get touched. We don't treat them with anything, we just grow them out in the open, not covered and protected, and they produce a really good crop year after year. These are grown from seed, and this one is now in its 2nd year, so they do put on quite a good size, and I find the taste of them, the cabbagey taste is sweeter than many others, and for that I really like it. This delicate little climber here is Hablitzia tamanoides. I don't know if I've said that right. It's Caucasian spinach, It is a perennial climbing spinach, and it's really good for filling the hungry gap. Produces leaves at a time when there's not much else growing in the garden, so I really like it for that. This again, very easy to grow from seed. Perhaps you can see it's now flowering, lovely little delicate flowers, and you can collect the seeds and grow on again, but because it's a perennial and it grows to around 3 metres high, you don't really need very many plants to provide you with a few very welcome leaves early in the year. And this area is predominantly filled with self-sown annuals. So here we've got red orich. It tastes like spinach. I find this very strong in flavour, but the smallest leaves I'll use in salads, and you can use the larger leaves and cook them exactly like spinach. They are prolific self-seeders, so the one plant here last year has produced dozens of young plants this year. Just here is carrots. Carrots produce the most beautiful of flowers. I was growing these to collect the seeds, however we will be moved before they are ready, but I'm going to leave them here anyway because I find them beautiful. And at the back here is some chard, and there's also a yellow stemmed one there. The great thing about chard is even when it's going to flower and to try and produce seed, you can still eat the leaves. They don't have a bitterness like spinach would when it goes to seed. So you can carry on harvesting from your chard right the way through until you want to remove it. Or you can leave it to go to seed and it will then scatter the seeds everywhere, and you'll have more chard next year with no effort whatsoever. And then here, this sea of beautiful flowers. This is salsify, and it produces this lovely purple flower, which then very quickly, in just a matter of days, become these seed heads, very like a dandelion. It's a seed and very fine fluffy ends, so they can fly in the wind and disperse, plant themselves everywhere. It can be a bit of a thug. This patch I'm standing in is self-sown. They're in the pathway, it's not ideal, but salsify has got very, very tasty roots, so I'm very happy for these to grow wherever they land, and lift them, use the roots, compost the rest of it. And here, behind some more salsify, is rosemary, and we have plenty of perennial herbs right through the garden, which allow us to, this smells wonderful, which allows us to use fresh herbs in the cooking all the time. I have a dedicated herb bed very close to the kitchen, but I also like them throughout the garden. And rosemary, again, although it's a perennial herb, it is very easy to propagate. Just take a piece, remove the lower leaves, and pop that into the ground, and it will grow away. One of the joys of our mild temperate climate is that many of these plants are very happy to grow just from a very simple cutting. In this raised bed there are two very happy accidents. One is that I didn't harvest all of the potatoes last year. There must have been some left behind because I have potato plants growing. I didn't sow these seed potatoes, they were in the ground, and if you leave a few potatoes in the ground when you harvest the previous year, they'll happily grow. And it is just a fortunate accident that they are in a place I'm very happy for them to be. I've already harvested a couple of plants from in here, and we had a really good meal from each of the two plants. Made some really nice potato salad with the very small baby potatoes. And the other thing that's in this bed are some climbing beans. They're Greek gigantes beans that I planted in here 4 years ago. And each year, I just, rather than digging them up, I just cut off the stalks and they regrow. So over here, here it is, ready to climb up a stake. I need to get a bamboo cane in here for the new owners of our house to be able to enjoy these beans. But it's not just that one plant, there are a couple more here. There's some more in a bed in that direction and some more in the bed behind me. So we've been able to bring these beans on year after year, and each year they throw up more stems. They're bushier and healthier plants. It's certainly worth giving a go because I can't rely on these beans coming up every year. I do sow fresh seeds, but it's really nice that in the garden there are about a dozen plants or more that will just regrow every year, giving me a better and better harvest. This is a globe artichoke, and like its relation, a cardoon, they produce these huge silvery leaves, really architectural display, and then provide the delicacy of those fabulous globe artichokes. Unfortunately, I can't show you one on the plant right now because we harvested them over the weekend. There will be some more coming up from around the central ones very soon. I can see some very tiny ones coming, and so if you have the space for these plants, they are well worth it. I think anything that is really costly and expensive in the shop is worth giving space to in your garden. And so likewise, if you have room for it, it's also worth growing asparagus. This is our asparagus bed, and as you can see, it's now mostly growing ferns. There are some spears still coming up, and we're harvesting a few of those. Asparagus is a really long-term investment. You can grow it from seed or by 2-year-old crowns, which is what we did. But even then, you don't want to be harvesting a huge amount from it for the first couple of years. But once it's established, it will produce masses of stems, masses of spears for you to harvest and to enjoy. And the great thing about asparagus is it will carry on being productive for around 20 years or more. Now, if I wasn't growing asparagus as a vegetable, I actually think I'd have it in the garden anyway, because it's so light and airy, and it just provides this wonderful frothiness and fluff in the garden, and I really like the way it gently moves in the wind. There are plenty of plants that we leave to go to seed, so like the carrot, spring onions and ordinary onions and leeks. I'll leave all of those to go to seed and to sow themselves wherever they want in the garden. This allows polycultures to naturally develop in a rhythm and a pattern each year. And likewise, we allow parsnips to go to seed. They provide us with fresh seeds each year. They also self-sow, and we let those seedlings grow on. And there are a host of other perennial vegetables like walking onions, Babington leeks and skirret, all of which are now in pots ready to take to our new home. Here in the food forest, there are plenty of fruit bushes. The currants are just starting to ripen. We've had really good harvests of rhubarb. The strawberries are in season now, and the apple trees and other fruit trees are well on their way to producing more food. And so even though I haven't purposely sown very many annual vegetables this year, there's still plenty growing in the garden, and it's really made me think about the amount of effort I put into growing annual vegetables each year, and how in our next garden we might grow even more perennials and reduce that annual workload.